Hello everybody. First, you may have been waiting a bit for a new video of mine. Well, I was on holiday and otherwise I've been extremely busy both professionally and privately. I will need to do an update on that a bit later in the year because it will have an influence on, you could say, the regularity of my publishing. Anyway, now today I would like to show you a really lovely, truly traditional French pocket knife. This one is called Le Alpin, like the Alpineer or the Alp mountain mountaineer. Sometimes a very close variant is also called the Savoyard. So this design, which I think is pretty clean, nice, simple, utilitarian, but in a good way, is already more than 100 years old. It's probably a bit older than the Opinel, which is made, you could say, roughly in the same region. So this one, the traditional pocket knife for general outdoor use from the Alps region, is even found, you could say, quite similarly in Italy at the Italian side of the Alp mountains. So it shows that this is really a traditional design. Let's show you an Opinel. That's an Opinel 9, which is of which the blade is the same size as the Alpin. I put them side by side, and you see that the end of the handle is a bit similar how it's formed, so that to stop your hand, you could say, from gliding off, to give a good sturdy hand holding, you could say, in the classic fashion. Similar to the Opinel, the handle of an Alpin is also quite relatively thick and round. Well, in general, it must be said this one is more slender than the classic Opinel, but the aim of the knife was really like similarly to provide with a simple, useful pocket knife. The blade kind of this one, it's called a yataghan form. To be precise, a yataghan with drop point, and in fact it's also sometimes also referred to with the Opinel. If you look here at Opinel, the blade still, the spine of the blade still goes on quite straight and then it dips, but here, more in Turkish style, the Opinel picks up again towards the end, while the Alpin continues to go down. In a way, this is a bit similar to here, a somewhat smaller Lagiole that I have. You see there is some similarity there, but still for the Lagiole, the spine rises a bit more in the beginning and there is more of a slope. In general, you can see there a bit the traditional influence that must have existed there more than 100 years ago. So maybe that this form is somewhat inspired by the Lagiole, which is likely older, to my knowledge. The Lagiole design is likely older. The Lagioles are also nice, traditional, general, lighter use outdoor knives. It must be, nowadays, Lagioles are more posh, nice for, you could say, for eating, usually, and some wood carving, but it's not really a heavy use knife. While I think that the Alpin still has that somewhat more sturdy utilitarian look and feel to it. But of course, already a 9 cm blade, not too thick, 3 mm thick. It's also useful for food. Let's say when you go on a picnic, it will go well. Finally, just a comparison to show it is quite different, the European traditional knives, from, you could say, the American traditional knives. This is one, okay, this one is made in Germany, but it's truly in the American style. I think you can see it is really quite a different approach. Typical for the French traditional knives is that very often the steel that they use is 12C27, as you can see, which is a decent, nicely stainless mid-range steel from Sandvik, the Swedish company. Now, some companies in France, like Perceval, for example, use higher end steels. This one, mid-range, you could say, a bit like 440C, but a bit less toothy in feel when you cut, but general decent mid-range performance. And that is quite typical of the French knives designers. So you could say that except for company like Perceval and maybe one or two more, most of them are very happy enough with this kind of mid-range steel. And rather, what you have when you go to French cutlery shops is that they give you plenty of choice for different handle materials, and it's always well, most of it is nice natural handle materials. This is mine here. This is the Alpin with ebony wood handle, but you can see there is also what they call amorette, snake wood. Oops, sorry. There is cocobolo, rosewood. That is all from this vendor. I come back to that. Juniper wood, that's the one that smells like pepper. Boxwood, the hardest European wood is that, and always nice olive wood. So this is here from one maker. That's the one that the website, that's the one where I bought my Alpin from. Is called C. Lacase. You can see, you Americans may want probably to pronounce it as Lacase, but in French it will be rather Lacase. And look, here is logo. It's a bit a medieval looking, you could say, flower kind of logo. And typical also for many French cutleries that they have nice fine work here a bit on the spine of the blade. Now there are many Alpins which don't have that. I come back to it. An Alpin is traditionally a simple pocket knife, so you could say that file work on the spine here is a bit overkill. And here also on the spring, because it's a slip joint. So here indeed this is a more luxurious, modern approach to the classic Alpin. So you can still find them from many makers. That's what you have with traditional knives, just as American traditional knives. You can also find them from many makers, and also in different sizes. This one is one of the longer on the market with a 9 centimeter blade and around 10.3 centimeter handle. So 9 centimeter blade, I would say, is around 3.5 inch. No, yeah, let's say 3.5 inches long, the blade, and a good 4 inches long as a handle. And what you have also with ebony wood, it is pleasant in the touch. So that I can share the passion of the French for nice materials. I visited a company in Thiers in France where they make a lot of knives. That was Perceval, by the way, and you can see with all the love that they have for all those nice handle materials. So in fact, in France you will barely find any pocket knives with G10 handles. It's simply not done. It's simply not chic enough. You can find a handful with carbon fiber because it's seen as pretty high-end, pretty modern, and very sometimes with micarta, but G10 you will almost never find. In general, you can really say that the French really, I mentioned it, love nice natural materials, and here that ebony wood really feels nice in the hand. Mine is almost completely, you could say, very dark brown to black. Sometimes you have with ebony wood that there is a slight streak of green. So anyway, let me close it for you now. So it's a slip joint with a pretty strong backspring. So that is quite sturdy, and I like that feel. Look here that it is reasonably well centered. It doesn't, well, it is a bit more, there's a bit more opening. No, in fact, this is the perspective of the camera. It is quite tight, the blade, between the two liners. Maybe it's a tiny bit more to the right, but you see here in front it is pretty good, and it doesn't touch the side, so that it means it's well adjusted. Here you really have to pull quite a bit with there's a mid stop here which adds some security, and you hear the nice snap when it falls into place. This one has bolsters, some other cheaper models sometimes don't have bolsters. But so indeed you can find this one is a bit more high-end. Well, high-end is not really the word for such a knife, a bit more elegant, but you can find simple ones for around 20 euros in France. So really an interesting traditional pocket knife, perfect for many lighter uses, you could say. If you need to cut a tiny bit of wood, or for some food prep, or cut a bit of rope while you're walking around, peel an apple, that kind of stuff. Nice companion knife. And what you compare to the Opinel, which is well much cheaper. Opinels are great, but you know the handle, when the handle swells, it is difficult to open and close. You won't have that here. And so I mentioned also, it is quite a bit more sturdy in feel than the lovely classic Lagiols. So that's why I think it's a really interesting traditional design for general walking around. Notice here the metal, the end of the knife here is quite sturdy with the metal. Now I wouldn't hammer with it, to be honest, but it's a good feeling that it's so sturdy. At first sight the bolsters are in one piece with the liner, but that's not so. If you look carefully here, you can see that it has been nicely polished, but it's added on top. But that's okay. Yeah? Typically also many French makers, they have their own almost signature kind of file work, especially when it's human workers working for a somewhat larger factory. They typically are allowed to each have their own file work, so you can distinguish them. Here in this case I believe that it's Mr. Lacaze himself who makes all of them, all of his knives. So yes, it's pretty nice really. Well, that's in fact everything I wanted to say. You notice here that it's quite slender here at the bolsters, but it gets quite a bit wider towards the back. Let me see here how much actually. So it's around, at its thickest, it's around 1.8 centimeter. So 2/3 of an inch. At its thinnest here, it's around 1 centimeter. So quite peculiar, and still I must say that's why, yeah, it's really quite stiff. It gives really good hand holding. So well, I hope you found this interesting. Lovely traditional knife, timeless looks, 100 years old, but could have been designed now. No nonsense, clean, pure. Strongly recommended for you to investigate the Alpin design. Goodbye.